All right, we're live. UFC 255 post-fight show. I'm Matthew Wells, Pat Auger, Drake Riggs alongside with various degrees of sobriety here to recap the action that we just witnessed. Two title fights, amazing night of fights throughout the entire card. We're going to break it down here, but let's start at the very top. Deiveson Figueiredo defended his title against one Alex Perez. Did anything about this surprise you guys? Because I was expecting a lot more in terms of a longer fight, but Figueiredo had other things in mind.
Nothing surprised me here. I actually placed a bet on Figueiredo getting a sub. I thought originally he was going to hurt Perez and then do the sub similar to what he did to Joseph Benavidez, but Perez is a tough out. That's not to say Perez is not worthy of the title shot. Totally deserved it. But Figueiredo, for the longest time, his only loss where he was soundly beaten was against Jussier Formiga, right? Who just had his number, knew exactly what to do to counteract him. Other than that, Figueiredo has looked like a monster. So it's not surprising at all that he ends up beating Perez, who got knocked out by Benavidez, has been in the UFC for a bit, but hasn't exactly, had the win against the leg kick win, right, against Formiga, which is huge. But at the same time, hasn't exactly had the same length of schedule as Figueiredo has, where he's just looked phenomenal day in, day out. And that also, just to go back and backtrack a little bit, Figueiredo's only loss came against Formiga when he was cutting weight late notice, and he cut 37 pounds, I think, in a week, something like that. He wasn't on the same weight plan that he's on now, so that makes a huge difference too, because he obviously had a new nutritionist now. He was in on weight, one of the first to weigh in, 10 minutes in, if not the first to weigh in. I think he was. Is that correct?
I believe so.
He was up
there. Yeah. So I mean,
yeah, he was early.
Yeah. So Figueiredo looks like a dominant 125 champion. I don't see anybody beating him here.
Yeah, he's definitely brought in that championship aura, so to speak, into the cage, and you saw that tonight as well. Drake, what did you make of that performance, man? Because it impressed me.
No, it was super impressive. I mean, Figueiredo is always, since he's gotten to the UFC, proven to be one of the best finishers in the division, just whether it's with submissions or knockout power. I feel like his knockout power has overshadowed his great grappling, which we saw tonight. And I did expect him to win. I was thinking like second round TKO after, a pretty back and forth war. But, man, the way that he dropped down for the ankle and then, Perez gets on top. That's that whole scramble and sequence. And then to lock in the guillotine. And, I know you were a little bit critical of Perez's, defense of the guillotine there so early. And I mean, it was pretty crazy to see that was how it finished, and so quickly, right under 2 minutes. I didn't realize it was that quickly, but yeah, obviously very fast, and that was the biggest surprise for me. Knew that Figueiredo getting a finish was no surprise whatsoever. Perez, I thought, was looking pretty good on the feet for the time that it lasted. Obviously, not much to show there, but a game challenger. Just this shows how good and dangerous the Deiveson is everywhere, man. It's gonna be very tough to beat him, but yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Good stuff.
For sure. And as people are coming in here, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel as we break down UFC 255 here. I do want to talk about that scramble that eventually led to the finish, right? Because Perez had the left leg of Figueiredo up way high. Like he was trying to lift that onto his own shoulder to start his own takedown. And we saw Figgy grab the fence a couple of times to maintain posture. Now, Mark Goddard warned him, and the first time he warned him, he let go. And as he started losing his ground again, he grabbed the fence again to regain posture, and Mark just said, let it go. But that allowed him to set himself up to jump on the leg and start that scramble. Do we think that Alex Perez got a little screwed here by the fence grabs? Because I think there's a little bit of something there.
Yeah. I would say yes. This isn't the only fight where we had fence grabs, which I'm sure we'll cover.
The theme of the night, unofficially.
Yes. But, I mean, here's the thing, right? Talk about fouls. As Mr. Wells, as you and I have talked about, groin kicks, right? Groin shots.
Mm-hmm.
First time, warning. Second time, maybe lose a point by default. Depending on the situation, maybe you get a little bit of extension there, like crazy in the clinch knees. Okay, we can look left or right there, depending on what's going on. But when it comes to grabbing the fence, that's a blatant thing. And yes, there is no denying that Figgy grabbed the fence a couple times here. And again, was just warned. There was no point taken. There was no advantage given to him. That's, that makes a big difference in a fight, especially when then he gets the submission win. So I think Perez was screwed a little bit here. Again, I was big on Figgy going into this match, and I think he still probably would have got it done. But given how he looked on the feet, like Perez was landing good shots, and then you had that whole exchange where Figgy grabbed the fence. That's pretty blatant, and that's a failing of Mark Goddard, to be honest. There should have been either a point taken away or, at the bare minimum, a position given to Perez as an advantage.
It's really interesting that, we bring that up. And speaking of Mark Goddard, because in the past, he's been like one of the best refs when it comes to fixing these kind of errors or fouls that should be more enforced, right? Like the best example that always comes to mind, especially in terms of fence grabs. You guys remember Jacare versus Romero. Goddard was the ref in that one. Blatant, terrible fence grab from, I think it was Romero I don't remember who exactly it was, but they got the takedown or avoided the takedown because of he held the fence, and then I think he avoided the takedown and stood up still and fell on him, something like that. And then Goddard was like, no, man, because you grabbed the fence there, I'm taking that position away, stood him right back up. So, I mean, obviously Goddard's been a little bit iffy lately, which is sad because he used to be like one of the best in my opinion. But yeah, just kind of a poor lack of awareness on his part lately, not just in this fight, but yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. It's a really tricky. I wish that there were more enforcements of these pre-fouls, because they're not even turning them into fouls, which they are, because they're not doing anything about it. So yeah, either way though, I do think Figueiredo still would have ended up, finding the victory at some point, but maybe not as quickly. Who knows?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing to really work through as you see that lead to the finish in that same sequence. And I agree with you. I think it was going to eventually result with Figgy getting his hand raised one way or the other, but it's just unfortunate to see that happen in that same sequence. So when we look forward ahead, like what's next for him as a champ now looking to defend his belt again? Apparently, Dana White has already made his mind up on this, and he just said at the post-fight press conference that they are going to make him turn around very quickly. They're not allowing him to leave back to Brazil. You're going to stay here in Las Vegas, and they plan on having him fight a man who also competed tonight that we'll talk about in a second, Brandon Moreno, in December. So very quick turnaround.
It's holidays, Dana. You can't do that. It's got family time, bro. Right? I mean, come on.
No, I agree. Right? It seems like. I mean, I would assume that they asked him if he was okay with this.
Yeah, hope so.
You'd hope. Yeah.
You would hope.
I mean, I'd love to see him fight again soon, but I mean,
right? Yeah.
Just thinking, he seems like a family man, so that might surprise me if he was okay with that. But unless they make it very quickly, like before Christmas, I guess, right? Throw him on to that crazy UFC Vegas 17, right? Let's do it there. But I mean, you still got to have Hamzat as the main event, right? So he'd get co-main to that. So
oh no,
I don't know.
Do that. You can't do that.
Could you imagine?
It's bad enough we're giving him number 3. You're gonna give him main event over a champion? Oh my
That'd
god!
Pretty bad.
CNN, Matt, come on.
listen. Yeah, that's a stretch even for CNN. Just trying to news network here. All right. But listen, I'm glad to hear that they are on board with the obvious matchup, though. Yes. I mean, there's no other matchup right now to make. So, I mean, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's the fight. I never liked the idea of Cody getting an instant title shot without making flyweight. I mean, I wasn't even on board with TJ getting it because that was a gamble if he would even make it. And we saw that he needed some help to get there. So, I mean, it's one of those things where let's learn from the past. I mean, let's let's be more logical about things, especially when Moreno put on such a phenomenal performance in a fantastic fight, as long as that one lasted, which we will get to as well, or we could just get right to it right now. But yeah, I'm happy that that is the direction they're going in, especially when they put that fight on this same card, so you could see both of them. And usually Dana, he'll be a little bit weird about those things and not say that, yeah, that's what we're doing right away. He's like, oh, we'll wait, see on Tuesday, right? The matchmakers meeting on Tuesday. But
Yes.
yeah, hopefully he holds to that. No matter when, if that fight is next month, which would be cool. I mean, we'll see again how both guys are feeling and whatnot. But yeah, that's the right move. So yeah, how do you feel about it, Pat?
I think it's definitely the right move. I honestly have a little bit of conflicting feelings about the stoppage on the Moreno Royval fight myself. I don't know. We were at 1 second there. I feel like Royval was moving enough. You might as well let it go to the next round. I loved everything until that stoppage. So for me, it was a little bit like, just let him fight. What are you doing? But that being said, Moreno definitely deserves it. Especially over Garbrandt. That fight never made sense. It was, hey, guess what? I knocked out Rafael Assunção, who I love. Rafael Assunção. I feel bad for him, just in perpetuity, forever, based on everything he did to not get the title shot and then lose multiple times in contender fights. I feel bad for him, but there's no way Garbrandt should have been able to get a title fight off of that, especially because that's a weight class above 125, and there are legitimate contenders, aka Brandon Moreno, who's clearly put himself as the number one contender in this division and should definitely get the next shot. So I'm all about that fight. We'll see if that actually gets put on a card. It's a little bit different than normal years for the UFC, where they normally have a big year-end pay-per-view, and that's not the case. We have that December 19th card, which is stacked, but that's a fight night. And we have Khamzat Chimaev, our, gracious benefactor, that gives us all the subscribers here. By the way, again, like and subscribe if you're just joining. But, he's a guy. But it's not the UFC 245 we saw last year. It's not, the previous pay-per-views we've seen where you have that stacked end-of-the-year pay-per-view. That's just not the case this year. So I would love to see Figgy and Moreno fight it out on December 19th. I don't think it's going to happen. My guess is it's going to be Q1 of 2021.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of weird things, like you mentioned. Obviously, I mean, it's 2020. Like, nothing is going to be on track with what we usually have. But again, I'm glad to hear that they already have a clear idea of what they want to do next. Now, let's talk about the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko, we all know how dominant she is, facing Jennifer Maia, who proved to be a game opponent, but no one really gave her much of a chance, especially at the betting window, coming in at minus 2,000 favorite Valentina Shevchenko. That's a huge line. Did this fight disappoint you in any way? Because watching Twitter, watching social media, some people seem to be a little bit off-put by the game plan and the approach by Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah, for me, this was far more competitive than I expected, right? I kind of thought Valentina would go in there and do something similar to what she did to Katlyn Chookagian. I thought she was going to just go in there, dominate. It was going to be a finish. That was that. This was far more competitive than I think we've seen Valentina at 125 maybe ever. This might have been her biggest challenge at 125. I can't think of another time where she's had a fight where someone really pushed her in some instances, got on top of her, right? Maia at times was on top of her in the ground game. That is a rare sight for Valentina. So for me, I get Shevchenko's game plan. I understand why she did it. But at the same time, it made the fight look much closer than it was. I still think Shev won clearly. I don't think it was any debate where, Maia maybe had a chance. No, that's not the case. But there were instances where Maia was winning that fight. The 49-46, I think is justified. I think in some cases you might even lean 48, 47. I understand why a lot of people wouldn't do that, but the fact it was as close as it was at 125 when Shevchenko has been nothing but dominant speaks a lot to where maybe that game plan wasn't the right move in this circumstance.
Jake, what do you think?
Listen, listen, okay. I thoroughly enjoyed this fight because as somebody who has followed this division for a long time, since before, it was in the UFC and everything, and seeing Maia finally get here and do, of course, she's still clearly lost, but to be competitive whatsoever when everybody countered out all the ignorance, man, this is exactly how I expected the fight to go. I'm not surprised by this all, and you're going to not believe me and everything, but hear me out, okay? This is how I expected the fight to go. Maia to have some moments. I expected maybe at least some submission attempts from her. Didn't really get anything whatsoever, but that's like the only thing that didn't happen in this fight that surprised me. Because there were moments for her to, toss up some arm bars or anything, especially early on there. But yeah, this was about as as I expected it to play out. Maia have some moments on the feet, land some good shots, but still take the worst of the shots in terms of effectiveness from Valentina, and then be able to hang in the grappling, maybe more so than she was hanging on the feet. Either way, she's not the betting line. Absolutely insane, completely disrespectful to her former best flyweight in the world. This was literally the fight of two eras of the flyweight division, right? Of course, Maia's still hanging around the top of it, but you look at the pinnacles, right? This was the clash of that. So I'm happy we got to see it. I'm happy that it played out really as it should have, because even though Maia really wasn't supposed to win, it shouldn't have been this surprising to everybody who really knows who she is and has seen her body of work beforehand. Just that recency bias in the UFC, she hasn't quite lived up to what she did beforehand, which of course, that happens sometimes, but still, it's not like she was getting totally finished by people before fighting Valentina here. So yeah, it went about as I expected. I'm happy to see that, even though it wasn't the best fight ever, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't, it was fine. It was fine for what I was hoping to get out of it, which is what it is. But yeah, that's just Valentina made the adjustments as it went on. So champion for a reason.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of people, like I said at the beginning of this, they were kind of upset with how the fight played out, because for some reason, a lot of people, I guess, were thinking she was going to go out there and do what she did to Jessica. I never saw that coming. And you also have to take into account that Amanda Nunes apparently gave Jennifer Maia some tips. So listen, that's one person that kind of haunts Valentina Shevchenko and her legacy is Amanda Nunes. So if anybody has some game planning tips to, or some looks or whatever have you that may kind of stall Valentina in certain spots, Amanda Nunes is a person to turn to for that. Now, I will say this fight did kind of remind me of the Liz Carmouche fight, which took place over a year ago. That was a 5-round decision. The first 2 rounds of that fight were mostly spent or I think they were all on the feet, but then the later rounds had a lot of grappling, a lot of mat time, and it wasn't, just all explosive Valentina. And very rarely do we see Valentina leave that pocket where she's comfortable, where she's going to control the action. She's going to stay in her safe space, right? But like if you step in too quick, she's going to chop you up with some counter hooks. Or, if she feels aggressive, she's going to do it on her terms. She's not going to leave herself open for very many counters or anything like that. She's very, very, very particular about how she executes her game plan. And this didn't really surprise me tonight. I thought it was a very calculated approach, especially considering she had that knee surgery as well. So maybe possibly she wasn't 100% confident in everything she was doing. Maybe that was in the back of her mind a little bit, but largely it still looked like Valentina to me. It just wasn't a Valentina that was trying to end the fight by any means. I felt like she was out there just getting mat time, and that's what she said after the fact. She's like, I just wanted to hang out for a little bit. I wanted to get used to this cage. Kind of forgot how it felt. Jessica, I didn't put up much of a resistance. Katlyn Chookagian didn't have much for me either. It's just so maybe, I'm not mad at her for the performance. And still, I don't know who's going to take that title off of her. It looks like Andrade is next. Is that the right move?
I think it's the right move. And just to wrap up the conversation about Valentina's previous fights, let's not forget, right? I was at UFC 238. And let me tell you, up until that head kick, that fight, right? Go back and watch that fight. It was very much how this fight played out. It wasn't exciting, just, constant back and forth. No, people were calling it a very boring fight. I was sitting next to many prominent journalists who were on their phones doing other things saying, look it up. Okay, yep, classic Valentina, let me do this. And then you had that crazy head kick KO, and it was like, whoa, here we go. But up until then, it was a classic Valentina fight. So yes, guess what? The Maia fight actually went, again, as many Valentina fights do. People have forgotten that this is the norm. This is what Valentina does. She is strategic. She picks her shots. She picks what she does, and she gets the decision. That has always been Valentina. You go back to the Nunes fight. Nunes versus Shevchenko 2. Super close fight, split decision. Many people have it scored for Nunes. Others, like myself, I'll be open about that, had it for Shevchenko, but I get where Nunes won. The point is this is always how Valentina fights in a general sense. She will take an opportunity if you present it, but otherwise she plays it safe. She does the strategy that gets the win, and that's usually unanimous decisions. So, yeah, I'm not shocked by this decision at all. When it comes to Andrade versus Shevchenko, I think that's a great fight to make. I think that is the next fight. Valentina's pretty much cleared out the division otherwise, if you look at it, right? Shevchenko has beaten Chookagian, who just, again, beat Calvillo, who was maybe the next up-and-comer who would have gotten a shot had she submitted Chookagian or gone out there and put on just a phenomenal performance, but she lost. Who else is there besides Andrade at this point? And Andrade is a former strawweight champion, has fought all the way up at bantamweight, up at 135. I mean, this makes logical sense to me. So I love that fight. I think that's the next real challenge for Shevchenko outside of Nunes. I still think Shevchenko gets it done. Again, probably unanimous decision, very similar to how the fight went tonight. But I like that fight a lot compared to other matchups you may throw at her at 125.
I love that you brought that up, Pat, because you are so right. The eye knockout and the Cachoeira fight have just completely, that's all people remember. That is all people want to remember. And they claim that Valentina is the assassin of all assassins because of these two performances, who you got to look at the resume, probably your two worst opponents too, which is like, you add it all into consideration. It's like, come on, guys. Like, she's had multiple fights since these fights and in between and everything. It's just such a funny thing how, of course, the most impressive showings, yeah, you're going to remember those. But when if you're going to be upset about how something plays out that just happened, you got to think about everything else besides just those two. So it's Valentina is not, some crazy, reckless wrecking ball of a fighter. She goes and does her thing. She's going to go for the win and she's a very smart fighter, very tactical. Just because she has, those two performances that stand out the most does not mean that happens every single time. Those are rare, actually. Those are rare instances, which is maybe why they stand out more, right? So it's a crazy thing with Valentina. But as for who is next, yeah, the Andrade fight is the one that is the most exciting, I think. But we left out the mention of Lauren Murphy, who I do think needs to be mentioned because she's on a hot run right now. Great winning streak in terms of contenders, looking better than she ever has in her career right now, especially at flyweight and everything. But it's still, I don't think that getting that win over Shakarova and Calvillo having to pull out of that helped her case whatsoever, on top of Andrade, jumping right in and finishing Chookagian how she did. Just bad timing of things for Murphy. Maybe it would have been different if she beat Calvillo instead, but yeah, Andrade, I think is probably the next move. And then in that case, we can do a rematch of Murphy and Chookagian at flyweight, because Chookagian actually made her UFC debut against Murphy at bantamweight, if you remember, in a pretty close fight. I think it was a split decision, actually, but Chookagian, I thought, was the rightful winner, and she did get the win. So, why not run it back at flyweight years later, and Andrade can go and see what she can do. Obviously a very dangerous fighter as well. So, Yeah, there's some options out there.
Yeah, and I mean the only other option that everybody wants to see potentially is that third fight with Nunes, but Dana apparently shut that talk down tonight. And you know what? I'm not really mad at it. You know, I'm done.
Boo!
The ship has sailed from me, man. I'm over it.
Boo!
I'm over it.
If you're with me, comment right now because boo, you need to
over it.
have Chev versus Nunes 3. Yeah, sorry.
Listen, if it happens, I'm not gonna allow myself to dream on this one. Okay, it's one of those things. If it happens, I will be very, very excited about. But in my mind, for my sanity, I must not give it any sort of life right now. It's got to be completely shut out. I'm just like Dana. It's not happening. You know.
I mean,
Yeah,
Nunes
that's
is
good.
worried
Yeah,
about
don't
two
have
other
hope.
divisions.
Yeah,
No.
don't have hope. Just,
No,
you know.
I will not allow myself to have hope for that matchup. I will not, Pat.
Okay. All right.
So let's move on. Let's move on to how I like to call the co-main. Tim Means faced Mike Perry. So yeah, that guy. The UFC's dunce, so to speak. Listen, I hate that this fight was the co-main. I hate that it was above a top 5 matchup in the same division we were just talking about. But Tim Means and Mike Perry put on a pretty tough fight, back and forth, nice little battle there. Did you guys think that this played out any different than what you were expecting?
I did, yes. I think Tim Means looked more composed than I think I've seen Tim Means look in a long time. Just in the sense where he fought a very smart fight, right? I remember looking at this and saying, is that really Tim Means in there? Coming in and doing those things? Like coming in, jabbing, getting out of the way. Like, not just brawling, because we're so used to Tim Means going in there and just being like, I'm going to brawl, I'm going to get a knockout, or I'm going to get knocked out, or I'm going to get submitted, or I'm going to submit the guy. I'm going for a finish no matter what. This looked like a very smart fight from Tim Means, in my opinion. This was much more a composed Tim Means than we've seen maybe ever, arguably. And I feel like early on in his career, he fought like this a little bit, but he got so used to either being the guy that either finished or got finished that it kind of, people forgot that he could fight this type of fight, because he came in and he beat Perry soundly, but in a very smart tactical fight. I love this Tim Means. I want to see more of him. I think this is what he needs to do at welterweight, especially given his age, given his longevity in the promotion. This is what he needs to do to extend his career. This to me was surprising in the sense that I think Tim Means looked like I don't want to say brand new fighter, right? Because he still had some of his old, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to throw sensibilities, but he looked like a veteran more than he ever has in this fight, and I would love to see that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, dirty bird, right? That's the mentality that we're used to seeing.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, he did. That third round was pretty chaotic at times, where he was willing to throw down a bit there with Perry, getting a little bit careless. But I mean, come on, we can't resist the whole fight, can we, Tim? So, but for the most part, yeah, jab was on point this whole fight. Was just looking really good, throwing some vintage Tim Means elbows in the clinch when it got there. I mean, the biggest thing for me, I mean, I guess surprising wise is, or not really surprised, but I know that other people would be surprised by. In that first round, Perry, the round that he won, I think on most people's scorecards, barring one of the judges there, when he took the back and was looking close to maybe getting a rear naked choke. It's funny because I feel like Perry's ground game has actually looked more impressive in his recent fights than his stand-up, which it doesn't surprise me too much because if you remember, he competed at one of the submission undergrounds, and I was there for that one when he took on Al Iaquinta, and he actually beat Al, and everyone, I mean, Joe Rogan thinks that Al Iaquinta is a pretty good wrestler and all that stuff, but and I guess he is, but Mike Perry was able to to beat him in that match. And so I was like, okay, I guess he's got some pretty solid grappling chops, and he's been showing them a little bit since then. You look at the Mickey Gall win. Didn't think Perry looked that great in the striking there, and actually, was able to outgrapple Mickey Gall a bit there. And then, in this one, showed it off in the first round. But then on the feet, he just looked kind of slow. He hasn't looked the same since not having a actual training camp for the last couple fights. Just not the same clean striker that he used to be. Not that he was super technical or anything, but just has heavy hands, and we saw that here. Nothing really new from Mike Perry besides looking a little bit slower, I thought, because missed weight, of course, and all that good fun stuff. But yeah, Tim Means, a real veteran performance. I think that's safe to say. Still with some sprinkles of Dirty Bird in there. So fun. It was a fun fight, I thought. So yeah, and I mean, the right guy won. So just happy about that.
Yeah, I mean that's my biggest takeaway is that Mike Perry took an L, and that was the only thing I cared about tonight. So I'm very happy in that regard. And that's all I have to say about the fight. That's really about it. Tim Means, congratulations, coming through as a slight underdog against a very terrible human
That's
being.
Funny too that he was an underdog.
Yes, yes,
that's a funny thing.
Yeah, thank you again. Once again, I gotta just real
free
quick
money.
Shout out to the MMA community for just free money, because I've made so much money off y'all. It's been amazing. So keep doing that.
100%.
Just
100%.
This kitchen, yeah, it's about to be upgraded. So go ahead and keep giving me that free money. Just saying.
Shout out to the MMA community for
you guys upgrading his background. Yeah,
for footing the bill for the upgrades to Pat's Kitchen over there. We do appreciate it. Yeah, man. So again, my biggest takeaway is Mike Perry took an L, and I hope he continues to take L's. So that's all I have to say about that before I say much more things that could get us kicked off of YouTube. So the fight that should have been after that one, Katlyn Chookagian, Cynthia Calvillo, 3-round decision. I felt like Chookagian was in control for most of the fight. It seemed like, hey, you're going to play my game, and Calvillo couldn't do anything to change that. What did you guys think about it? I mean, Chookagian, again, sizable underdog, as we're talking about betting lines right there.
Drives me
Once again,
crazy.
thank you so much, MMA community. Just loving it, because the amount of money I made off of Chookagian is even more money than I made off of Tim Means. So thank you. Yeah, I never understood the line here, right? I think I got in at Chookagian at plus 210, which was just mind-boggling to me. Chookagian is a great fighter. She is not your, I'm going to go out there and take your head off fighter. I'm not the most exciting fighter. But she is a very, very good mixed martial artist. And Calvillo is good as well. And I've liked what I've seen since she moved up to flyweight. But at the same time, those odds were just crazy to me. And yeah, Chookagian just did what she needed to do again to get the decision. That's kind of her MO. She very rarely ever does not go to the judges' scorecards. The last time she didn't was against, again, Valentina Shevchenko, the undisputed 125 champion. But other than that, I'm pretty sure it's, I need to verify, but I want to say it's 9-10 fights since she went to a stoppage. Like, she just doesn't, well, besides the Andrade loss. Actually, let me walk that back a little bit. Obviously, she lost to Andrade. Behind that, I want to say it was 9 fights in a row of decisions, if not more. She is very, very good. And Calvillo is not a finisher either. She doesn't go out there and take off heads, doesn't get submissions all the time. It's not surprising this went to the judges' scorecards. It's not surprising that Chookagian was able to utilize her game plan to neutralize what Cynthia was trying to do out there. I thought this fight was a great matchup on paper. I thought it was a very close 50-50 toss-up when I looked at it on paper. And, of course, I took advantage of it in terms of the odds. But, Chookagian went out there, did her thing, and she's going to stay at the top of the 125 division. I think she will eventually work her way up to another Shivchenko fight. I don't know that she'll get there and actually win, but I think she'll probably end up with another title shot in the next 2 or 3 fights. And I think she's one of the best 125 pounders out there in the women's division that people really, really just disrespect or underrate, because she's very, very good. And I think she's proven that time and time again.
Taking the words out of my mouth, man. I need some Chookagian love here, dude, because this is exactly how the fight should have went if Calvillo didn't take it to the ground, which she really didn't try to that much, which is surprising in its own right. Maybe she just wasn't feeling comfortable enough to really come in there and bull rush, but why not? Why not just go for it? That's where your best chance of winning was. And on the feet, Chookagian always had the advantage. She has the advantage against a lot of people with her movement, her length, just very active. And perpetually just underrated, disrespected. It shows, I think, that the odds makers just have some serious ignorance / recency bias, for the fresh memories of the really bad losses. Of course, Andrade and the Shevchenko losses were bad, but you look at, she rebounds, nicely and continues to do her thing every time out in her wins. So it's not like it's one of those things where, like Shevchenko, where you look at those two big flashy performances, the things that stand out more, but you got to look at what's been more consistent. Chookagian is very consistent, a very smart fighter, doesn't really get thrown off by a lot of things, more often than not, right? So yeah, this fight, those odds, insane, just insane, but good for people to make some money. It shouldn't have been that way, but it's an interesting the kitchen. It'll be interesting to see how Calvillo kind of rebounds from this, who they decide to give her next. As we got from the Iman report here, Chookagian versus Murphy rematch. That's what I said earlier. Why not? I mean, the only reason I would say not to is because, let's say Chookagian wins again, and then she's right there. It's one of those cases where we've talked about Holloway, Whitaker, where they're next in line, but they've fought so recently. More so with Holloway, right, who has the 2 losses to Volkanovski, and then a very clear loss from Chookagian to Shevchenko. So it would put her in that weird territory where I guess it would be kind of similar to Joseph Benavidez when you think after he lost to a DJ both times, really had to rack up the wins, really was pretty much the Intercontinental Champion of the division, right? So that could be where Chookagian would be headed if she is to go against Murphy next. But it's like, that seems like it makes more sense, than giving her the title shot right now and do Andrade versus Murphy. That's a bit ridiculous. So yeah, either way, a solid and vintage Katlyn Chookagian performance here tonight, right? So, I mean, can't be mad at it. That's what she does. She got the win. Good for her.
Yeah, 100%. You can't be too mad at it. And while we have our man in the back here fact checking for us, Jake, 10 of 12 fights in the UFC went to decision for Katlyn there. So there you go. There's that stat correction for you. just to clarify, facts matter in 2020, guys. Okay. So one thing I do want to highlight before we move on real quick is that it's kind of hard to dismiss the similarities between Katlyn and a Frankie Edgar. They seem to move about quite similarly. And I mean, they come from the same camp, so it's not too much of a surprise. But if you had to compare, I guess, a male comp to a Katlyn Chookagian, I would look no further than Frankie Edgar. The stick and move, like you're not gonna corral me. I'm gonna stay in the center of this cage, do what I want to do, sort of thing. So good on her, man. And I'm with that idea of the Lauren Murphy rematch. I think that's the way to go next, because obviously we're gonna get Valentina and Andrade. So hey, why not? Just keep people busy, right?
Put it on the same card.
Yeah,
Do it.
And I like Ivan Report's suggestion here of Calvillo versus the Calderwood loser.
Okay.
That sounds
well. Not if it's I though.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's that's a rematch that's a little bit quick, but I like Calvillo versus Calderwood. I think that's a great
good
fight,
rematch.
Right?
Good rematch too.
Yeah, great rematch as well. So especially 125.
Yeah.
So yeah, but and I would say, I for me, Chookagian, in terms of the male counterpart, Jared Rochelle all day. That's just me. Decision machine just does his thing. But
Only for that, then. Only that.
Yeah.
Only for that. That's true. That's true.
Jeez.
But still, I mean,
Yeah.
just Jared Rochelle.
I didn't know where you were going with that for a second. But
3 Rochelle mentions in the last month.
Jesus Christ,
And,
that is so true.
I will take every opportunity to mention Jared Rochelle at every option.
Jared Rochelle's a good dude. Trains out of
is.
DFW.
He is. He's a great dude. He gets wins for the most part.
Let me
Not always.
Right. So yeah, I love it.
Let me throw this one out here before we move on. How about Maia and Calvillo? Why not? They both losers tonight.
You know, I'm not mad at that. I'm really not mad at that. I mean, it would be a better matchup for Calvillo, who's a fighter who needs to be in the clinch. Like, that's where she can start to really excel in her fights. A competitor like Katlyn is not very good stylistically for Cynthia. So Jennifer Maia will welcome that. She will welcome the clinch. She'll like, all right, let's go to the mat. Let's see what you got. So I think that will be a lot more interesting stylistically for those two.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah, the only thing. Sorry, I was on mute. The only thing I have a problem with there is that, again, you're looking at two top 5 flyweights fighting each other after coming off of losses, and I for one am a proponent of giving a little bit lower down in the division an opportunity to take those spots. So I like looking at the rankings here, I like Alexa Grasso versus Maia. I think that's a great one. I think that's an amazing one that hasn't been done yet. You could go Roxanne Modafferi. I think that would be a solid test, but at the same time, I don't know.
Maia,
I don't know
think
how
that'd be the
that.
trilogy fight. I think.
Right, that would be the trilogy, right? So
maybe
I don't know.
quad. They might have fought 3 times already. Some OGs.
It's possible. It is possible. Yeah, but I mean, I personally, I love the idea of Calvillo versus Maia in the sense of, you've got 2 great flyweights battling it out for keeping your position. But at the same time, I'd much rather prefer some of these up-and-coming flyweights to get an opportunity against those guys, right? Because otherwise you're just knocking people out, and then let's say Maia beats Calvillo. Okay, well, then you've got Maia sticking around. Calvillo, how does she even start to work her way back? So I say have them fight some up-and-comers. Let's see what's going on. And then if they beat a bunch of up-and-comers, then all day. Let's go ahead and do Maia versus Calvillo for a title limiter. That sounds great. But
No, I like it. We'll see how it plays out. So let's move on to the main card opener here. Paul Craig, Shogun Rua, who is still on pay-per-views in 2020 magically, but
below Mike Berry.
Jesus Christ. I mean, I don't know what to make of that anymore. Anywho, Shogun doing, like, I had to type something I never thought I would ever type, considering, Maurício Shogun Rua, that he tapped to strikes in this fight, which is very, very unfortunate and tells me that it's time to hang him up. Guys, did you ever think that you would see the day where Shogun is tapping to strikes to Paul Craig, a guy who, in their rematch fought to a split draw? Or in their original fight, rather. First fight.
yes, I did. Again, thank you, MMA community, for making Paul Craig. I think I got in at -150, and I was like, really? Okay. And I love Shogun, right? Shogun was one of the... Shogun versus Lyoto Machida was probably... That first fight was good. Probably the one that got me really into MMA. Yeah, I was kind of a semi-casual watcher, and that one made me a hardcore. I remember that title fight. I remember the controversy, right, around that title fight. I loved that fight, and I loved Shogun, and I loved Lyoto the Dragon Machida, and to see Shogun still fighting the way he is now, it's hard, right? We've talked about Anderson Silva. We've talked about some of these guys that we grew up on that are now reaching that age where it's like, man, you probably need to hang them up. You probably need to just set it down. We would love to see you compete, and we will always watch you because you are legends in the sport. But at the same time, you are not that same guy that fought for the title or won the title. And to go out there and lose to Paul Craig via tapping to strikes is, as you said, Mr. Wells, a perfect example of you need to hang him up. It's one thing if you get submitted. It's one thing if you get like rocked, knocked out, okay, whatever. If you're tapping to strikes and you're Shogun, it's time. And I hate to say that because I love the dude. But also in their first fight, Craig rocked him, and I thought at one point the ref could have stopped the fight. I really did. And he let it go, and it eventually ended up being a split draw. Shogun came back, did his thing. Great. I'm happy that went to a split draw. But when this got rebooked, I look at Paul Craig, who is still very much in his prime, and I looked at Shogun, who has only gotten much older, and you gotta wonder, what the odds makers were thinking here, saying, oh, it's negative 150 Paul Craig and plus 135 Shogun. And again, that comes as a lifelong Shogun fan. So I hate to say it, but Shogun needs to hang him up or do one of those, Brad Pickett versus Uriah Faber title, or not title fights, retirement fights. Just send him out on a win, or just have him hang him up, one of the two. But it's time. This was not that surprising to me. I know a lot of people are shocked by that result, but I'm not shocked that Craig stopped him by strikes, honestly.
I'm probably most surprised that he at least didn't have really any success. Like, I thought he would at least land some pretty good bombs, maybe get Craig to back up a little bit, but it was just really deflated shell of his old self, Shogun, which was just like kind of hard to watch, because Craig was just on him pretty much from the beginning. Craig looked great, but it's like, how much do you put into that victory? Because it was this version of Shogun, who has kind of been like the light heavyweight Arlovsky, but to a much worse degree, in terms of the up and downs of his career, and still being ranked in the light heavyweight rankings, mind you. Shogun was 14? Incredible. How does he do it? So, yeah, I mean, the rankings, that's how he does it, just they're what they are.
I got to interject real quick. Arlovsky is an enigma that will always be an enigma in terms of his chin just like goes away and then comes back. So, but go on.
Drinks that milk probably, just, strong bones. Whatever it is. Maybe he's on the horse meat diet. But yeah, it was sad. I don't need to see Shogun anymore, especially if he's looking like that. Even when he was getting his wins over the Lil Nog rematches and whatnot, it's just like he's kind of hanging on, turned into one of those guys who's hanging on for no reason. I mean, he wasn't going to climb back to a title shot or anything like that. And I do want to let you guys remind you a little bit. He did tap to strikes against John Jones. It was kind of after it got stopped, but it was also John Jones. So, I mean, tapping to strikes to Paul Craig, very big difference. But just for facts, right? Just for facts, he did tap
boo,
at the end of that.
Boo, Drake, boo.
What are these alternate facts you're bringing to the table tonight? What is this? What is this madness? I mean, look, at the end of the day, Shogun Rua is not the oldest fighter in MMA, but he is by far and away the oldest 38-year-old fighter in the game. So he fights like he's 65 right now. He needs to hang them up. Like, I don't want to see any other fantasy matchups between anybody. No, I'm done. I'm tired of seeing these legends like him and Anderson Silva go out there and get waxed. No more. Just hang it up. If you want to see Shogun fight, pull up the videotape. Pull up some classics.
And I just want to point out, you bring up a great point. He's 38, right? He's 38. Guess who's 39? Alan Jouban, who fought earlier on the card and looked significantly better. So
physically
That should tell
and
you right
performance-wise.
Yes. Yeah. If you think, oh, maybe he's still got a couple years, no, you go ahead and you look at Shogun's performance tonight. Go ahead and look at Alan Jouban, who is older than Shogun, and tell me which one should probably hang him up.
No, yeah, 100%, 100%. That's there's no denying the fight lives that the tread on the tire is gone when you're talking about a Shogun. Like Alan Jouban, if you're making that, like, look, he's got a beautiful face to protect. He's got modeling to do. He's not going to be in the fire like Shogun will. Okay.
And I gotta our producer fact checked me here, so I apologize.
Okay.
They have the same birthday, so I guess they're the same age is what he's saying. Either way, it still really doesn't change the fact is look at Alan Jouban tonight versus Shogun, who and they're the same age. You tell me who should keep fighting in the UFC and who should probably hang him up.
Even Boku last night looked better, and he's 43.
Yeah. He really did.
And he got finished worse.
Yes.
So
I mean, I guess that's arguable, actually.
But Boku is much more like an Arlovsky, right? Boku, yeah. But still, yes. Good point.
Absolutely. So as we continue down this episode of Drunk History, let's talk about the prelims. Let's go. We don't need to hit every fight, but this was a fight card where every bonus came from the prelims. So there are some things to talk about here. We already touched on Brandon Moreno in that stoppage. I mean, listen, if his shoulder pops out a socket, I mean, you kind of got to stop the fight, right? Even if, I mean, the shoulder dislocation is one of those weird things where you can pop it right back in and be like, all right, let's go again. But the way Royval was on the ground, like basically screaming in agony that he had that anterior dislocation. Crazy. I thought something way worse happened down there. But then he popped up and it's like, oh, his shoulders just popped out and then it popped right back in. And that is a painful thing. I have not had it happen to me, luckily, throughout my athletic endeavors in life. It's one of the things that I feared the most. I've had my nose broken, and I would rather have that happen again than my shoulder pop out, just because it's one of those weird things where I just fear that. It's weird to me. I don't understand how your arm can just be shut down and then it'd be good again when somebody pops it back in. I'm scared of that. I don't wish that on anyone. But Brandon Moreno, as we mentioned earlier, the guy that is in line, I guess, next for the title. So, I mean, good on him, right? Even if it was by injury.
Yeah. I mean, he was winning the fight up until then. Of course, Royval was putting up a good fight. This was my fight of the night. Of course, it wasn't as long as the one that did win fight of the night, but I loved that first round, man. I thought it was awesome. Even though Moreno was getting the better of it, but Royval, just such a gamer, dude. That guy is a scrappy fella. I hope to see a rematch someday. I saw people were saying that, let's do it next year at some point. Yeah, I'm down for that. Let's do it next. I don't care. Even though Moreno deserves a title shot, give me the rematch now. It was fun. But yeah, so it sucks that it ended that way, but it happened in the fight, so it's fair. It wasn't like something that was unfair, but yeah, it was a really fun fight. I loved it.
Yeah, I would have loved to see it go to the bench, I guess, or the corners to have the guy, pop it in and see, can I continue to fight? That's just me personally, though. I understand the stoppage. I'm not going to argue that and be like, this is terrible. No, that's fine. And I would love to see the rematch. But at the same time, this is one of those where I feel like we missed out on the true potential of Brandon Royval versus Brandon Moreno, where, I follow Brandon Royval since he was in LFA, since he won the belt. Dude, this guy, throughout all of his fights, always looks like he's down and out until he's not, right? Like, you look at the Tim Elliott fight, and it looks like Tim is just getting the best of him, and all of a sudden, just nope. Flip it around, just getting it, and it's just bonkers. He doesn't have a non-exciting fight. So I can't wait to see him come back into the octagon and fight somebody and hopefully get to a level where they have to do a Brandon Moreno rematch. But up until then, I don't know. It's one of those things where it sucks. It really sucks that this is the way the fight ended. But this is a great glimpse into how good flyweight is. Everyone's like, oh, flyweight's not exciting, whatever. Go watch this fight. Just go watch the first round of this fight. This is, how are you gonna say flyweight doesn't deserve a division when you look at this? I don't know. I really don't.
Drake?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, totally. It was the night of flyweights, and yeah, man.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So let's talk about the fight right before that one. The perennial bonus winner, Joaquin Buckley, highlight KO after highlight KO. I mean, he had the knockout of ever that no other knockout, I believe, will ever touch in terms of greatness. And how do you follow that up? Well, you follow that up with a brutal left hook that made your opponent's eyes roll in the back of his head. So I guess good on him again for following up that insane knockout with another pretty solid knockout. I mean, it didn't live up to the other one, but I mean, hell, you still go out there and knock your opponent out, an undefeated opponent in that Jordan Wright there. So what did you guys think of that? What did you think of the knockout?
I thought it was great. I mean, I thought, honestly, I thought Jordan Wright was a live dog a little bit, right? He was technically undefeated. Everyone was like, oh, he's undefeated. He lost Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, and then that got overturned. That was something a lot of people seem to overlook, where he wasn't invincible. He definitely had a loss on his record. It just got overturned. But, I thought Wright was still very much a live dog, especially at that weight class. And Buckley looked great. Again, I don't think this knockout compares to his infamous knockout of Impa Kasangane. I still don't, personally, I know I'm going to get flack for this, but I personally don't rate that as the best knockout ever. I still have the Rolling Thunder against Ross Pearson as my favorite knockout, because who knocks somebody out via Rolling Thunder? Who does that? Who is able to pull that off?
Tension.
Weak. All right, whatever. Anyway. All right, yeah, you can boo me. That's fine. That's boo. Look at this kitchen. You gonna boo me? Look at this kitchen. but no. Again, great highlight for Buckley. And at this point, a lot of people forget he got, and Kevin Holland made sure.
Brilliant move.
Yeah, as Mr. Wells pointed out to me, Kevin Holland made sure to point out, I knocked Buckley out, and he did. And this is the time for Buckley to really make a case for a higher level opponent. We'll see if he actually gets it. But, this is only creating more of a, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say star power around Buckley, but it is definitely really gathering some fans for him in terms of being like, yes, I want to see Joaquin Buckley fight. So we'll see what happens. But this was a great knockout for him, a great test. I think he needs a top 15 or top 25 opponent at least going forward, though.
Yeah, the thing that it's incredible to me, just the amount of hype that the UFC has generated for this guy off of one win is astounding. And I think unlike anything we've ever seen and probably ever will see. And I mean, sure, warranted because of the highlight itself, but it's just crazy, man. Like, this is the one thing most people know him for now, right? It's just that one win. Like we just mentioned, the Kevin Holland fight happened very shortly before that crazy knockout. Like, the guy he's not a top guy yet, right? So it's like he's living completely off of this one highlight right now. Goes out there, adds another one to his resume. Very good win, solid, highlight to add onto that highlight reel. But, against another guy who he should have beat. He should have beat Jordan Wright, always should have won this fight. Needs a step up, undeniably. And now it seems like he is game for this James Krause grudge match. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Let's get crazy. Throw him onto the Hamzat card next month. Let's just get it over with, huh? Come on, James Krause. That's a good step up. That's a veteran guy. Of course, he's not a top middleweight or anything like that. He's been doing his thing at welterweight, but I mean, it's written itself. It has just written itself into existence, and I think it's still a good test, despite the size difference for Buckley. It's a good gauge, and Yeah, you got to do it.
No, 100%, 100%. And I mean, listen, I want to know how long Kevin Holland had that tweet, like in the drafts.
Waiting.
I know he had that in the drafts like all week. He had it just sitting there waiting to hit send, because that was very well done. That is high quality tweeting right there, Mr. Kevin Holland. So I got to give you props on that. But yeah, absolutely, Buckley versus Krause, especially after that post fight interview, where he was just like, it was the direct call out of him that I love so much. He was like, I'm not even gonna mention his name, and Joe Rogan was like, oh, I know who you're talking about. Like, I ain't gonna say his name. Y'all know what it is. I loved it.
And then Joe's like, I'll say it for you. It's
exactly. Exactly. I loved it. So that has to be next. You can't have that sort of free promotion, right? Where it's not forced by the UFC or anything like that. Yeah, that's the way to go next. That's the way to go. Absolutely. So as we continue to move on the card here, let's go down to another bonus winner. Shevchenko's sister, Antonina, gets a very nice win over Ariane Lipski. And I mean, listen, I don't know if I guess it was bonus deserving, so to speak. Wasn't the most impressive bonus win ever, but still, it's a very nice win for her, going out there and getting it done. Second round TKO. What did you guys think? Did this surprise you? Because I was expecting a little bit more from Lipski, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very high in Lipski prior to coming in the UFC, right? Queen of Violence, KSW, her run there was phenomenal. And Lipski's just really struggled. It's been a real, eye opener in terms of looking at what she did in KSW and thinking, yes, she's going to be this big prospect that comes in, has exciting fights regardless, and then she just hasn't delivered on that. And that's hard to say. I disagree with the bonus performance here. I don't even like the stoppage, which we can get into later in terms of, what that particular ref was allowing as a stoppage versus other fights I have a particular view on, but I'm okay with the stoppage. Let me walk that back a little bit. I'm okay with the stoppage in the sense that it was, Lipski wasn't really doing much, wasn't defending herself a ton, but it also wasn't, we need to stop this like right now, right? You could have let it go on a little bit longer. I think the result would have been the same, but I don't think it was this stoppage where, okay, this is a performance bonus worthy stoppage. I don't think this was worth 50 Gs. I think this was a good win for, the older Shevchenko's sister. I think it solidifies her place in the top 15 and she's ready for, higher competition at this point. But I also was surprised that, especially with the way Lipski was just piecing her up on the feet, right? Like, it wasn't this one-sided beatdown from Antonia. It wasn't just like, yes, I am winning this fight in its entirety. On the feet, she was really, really struggling to deal with some of those big punches from Lipski, and she had more damage. If you looked at their faces, she looked worse off than Lipski did. Did she win the fight? 100%. But I don't think this is a 50 Gs performance, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, how the fuck did Figueiredo not get one? How did he not get it over this? I mean, come on. That was
He said it, not me, but yes.
I couldn't hold it in. I loved that finish. I mean, yes, overall performance. I mean, even then, Figueiredo, that was just beautiful stuff. I thought the whole, just from the beginning of the sequence and everything.
They took into account the cage grabs. That's what it was.
I guess so.
I guess no bonus for cage grabs. Sorry.
Yeah. He's like, damn it. Oh well, still got the belt. But yeah, as for this fight, man, and I'm so with you, Pat, dude. Like, before coming to the UFC, Lipski was, I think, like a top 7 in my books, and a lot of people had her top 10 worldwide at flyweight. She was on her way to being the next big thing in that division, and kind of was, a little bit in terms of outside, just the division as a whole. But yeah, man, just has been it's been rough. Been exposed since coming to the UFC. Lost the first two, JoJo and Molly McCann. No shame in those, but fights that going in, we thought that she had the capability to win. And then gained some momentum after that. Put together, what was it, two good wins? Of course, the knee bar in her last fight, and then the one before that, I forget who the opponent was, but a solid win. Not vintage Violence Queen, though. Not the KSW champion we came to know and love. She had some momentum going into this one, so I thought we would finally see those real flashes of it. And I mean, we kind of did on the feet. She was winning on the feet, and it just happened to be that the worst grappler of these two phenomenal strikers ended up being Lipski still. And it sucks. It really sucks to see, just with the background of her and everything. Yeah, she's got to fix that up. And I don't think that it tells us a whole lot about Antonina because of how not great Lipski's ground game has proven to be. So everybody's like, wow, look at this crazy evolution. Like, yes, there obviously is some, but let's not get too carried away about this. Remember what just happened to against Katlyn and what happened against Roxy? People with legit, grappling backgrounds. So I think you got to give her another grappler so that we can see if she's actually made some serious improvements. Like, this is just a little glimpse of improvements, but I don't think we could take too much away from it. So a good win, a needed win for Antonina, but I don't think it tells us as much as a lot of people on Twitter were making it out to seem like. So,
yeah, I agree with everything you just said right there, 100%. In terms of next, we got Diamond Report, Antonina versus De La Rosa, Montana De La Rosa. That'd be a great fight. That would be a great fight. Yeah. So I mean, I'm with that. And for Lipski, Ji-Yeon Kim, sure. I mean, I'm not mad at either one of those. I'm not mad at either one of those matchups.
That's a great fight to bring out the Lipski violence. Kim will walk through some fire.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna call it now. And I hate to call this, and if I'm wrong, I really hope I'm wrong. But I feel like she's gonna get cut. And I hate to say that. Dude, I hate to say it, but she wasn't brought in on that standard,
She
low
wasn't a contender
contract.
series.
Yes. Yeah, she wasn't in the contender series. This wasn't
Not
she was
tough.
brought in as the KSW flyweight champion. I am worried about her status because of that. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, because I love to watch her
Bellator
fight.
would be like, come on.
Oh.
Come on, Lipski.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. It's a fantastic point. Yeah, 100%. So I want to move on here to the very first fight of the night. There are other fights here that we can touch on if you guys want to, but let's jump to the very first fight of the evening, the curtain jerker, Louis Kosi, Sasha Palatnikov. This was fight of the night. I love it when the very first fight on the card gets the fight of the night bonus, because they set the tone early, man. This fight was nuts. That first round was wild. One of the very, very most intense first rounds in the entire year. We're saying that in November 22nd here. Like, it was just crazy. These dudes were just trading back and forth, a near finish, and then Palatnikov rebounds and like seems like he had Kosi on the ropes there for the last few seconds, and it just played out just bananas. I mean, if you needed some caffeine or something to get you going, like, just watch that first round. Like, that is the way you want to see a card start, especially when you know you're in for a long night of fights, because that will keep you going. I know a lot of people don't watch early prelims. This is the prime reason you need to tune in from the very beginning and watch these fights, even if you don't know who they are, because these guys entertained the hell out of me. I know it did for you guys too.
Yeah, I love this fight. I will say I disagree with the fight of the night performance myself. I think Joe Ban versus Gooden was more overall was more of a back and forth that was like on the edge of my seat. Who's gonna win this, right? But this was an amazing first round, as you said. It's arguably one of the greatest first rounds in the history of MMA. Just back and forth, just all over the place, phenomenal. And I as we've discussed in our chat, I disagree with some decisions by the referee. But at the same time, this was the type of fight that gets you hyped up for MMA, where you never know who's going to win, right? Kosi came in at a negative 550, I think is what the closing odds were. And Paletnikov just came in and did what he needed to do. I disagree with a couple of things the ref did, especially in terms of the fence grabs. That for me is big, where Paletnikov was warned, had the position taken away from him, and then grabbed the fence later and was warned again, which just blew my mind. It's like, how do you not take a point at that point? But at the same time, I don't think it would have made a difference, because Kosi really just spent all of his energy trying to finish him in the first round and was clearly just gassed going into rounds 2 and 3. But what a phenomenal fight overall, despite all that. A great example of you need to tune in for every prelim, because sometimes the prelims give the best fights. I wouldn't have given it the fight of the night myself, but it would have been a very close second. So if you're saying, oh, prelims or early prelims or whatever, you need to reevaluate what you're doing, because what a great fight to watch.
People have needed to reevaluate that since UFC 199. Polo, Reyes, and Kim, fight of the year in what was that, 19 UFC 199? Was that 2016? Fight of the year, 2016, so. Man. It opened the show for the best card of the year, too. That was phenomenal stuff. You should have reevaluated then. But yeah, this one was very good. I had to give a shout out there. Paletnikov, it was kind of the story of Paletnikov's durability against Kosi's inexperience in long fights, right? Because he overlapped his overall fight time in this fight. He had like 7.5 minutes of total fight time before this, and so that overlapped going through. So yeah, crazy back and forth war. That's always something, a bit of a struggle and learning experience for a guy like that who's got all those finishes and everything. Yeah, just an impressive showing from both guys, and obviously a big learning experience for Kosi, and history, of course, because Paletnikov representing Hong Kong. So yeah, I mean, great fight. You guys nailed it. Good way to open the show. Can't go wrong with something like that. But yeah, the durability versus the fight time and experience, I think, was the real big story here.
For sure. Guys, get your comments in if you're watching. Hit thumbs up this video, subscribe to the channel. Get those comments in, because we're about to address those here in just a second. But I do want to say, the milestone pop-up that you were just talking about there was kind of funny to me, because I was like, whoa, what's the milestone here? And it was like, oh, Kosi's fought for 5 minutes. What? It was just weird the way they put that on the screen like that. I thought there was like some major UFC record about being broken here. Like, nah, this dude's just been in the cage for 5 minutes. Like, that's never happened before. So
that was funny.
That kind of threw me off. Earlier. But yeah, to Pat's point about the refereeing, and it seems like these refs never want to take points for anything ever, no matter how many fouls. I mean, listen, you get your first warning in the back before you ever get into the cage. Why more refs don't take that into account? It boggles the mind. Then you get a warning inside the cage. And then you get another warning inside the cage. And then, you know what? After that, we may think about yelling at you a little bit more before we ever want to take a point for anything. I will give Tyone a little bit of a bail here, because he actually did change the position. So I did like that. But, I mean, still, it wasn't enough. I don't think it was enough in the situation, especially when a cage grab can prevent a takedown. In that particular instance, I don't believe that the takedown was that imminent to where, I don't think he was that close to actually completing a takedown where the fence grab prevented it, but it did maybe kind of hinder him from trying to advance it, if that makes sense, right? But when they are more egregious, when they are blatantly stopping a takedown from happening, I want to see a ref reward that takedown. Say stop, get on the mat, okay, now resume. And then if it happens again, then take a point. I don't understand why refs have these power to take points, and they never do. I don't understand it.
It's part of the rules.
I mean, it's too much leeway though, right?
Well, and to your point, right? Like, I know we've talked in terms of our chat where you didn't think the takedown is imminent. I thought maybe he could have got it if that grab wasn't there. But regardless of all that, this was after he had already been hard warned. You'd already had the position change, and then he did another fence grab, and you heard Taglioni just say, "Oh, don't grab the fence." It's like you warned him. I don't know how many times you hard warned him and said, "If this happens again, I'm taking a point." And then you warned him again verbally. How do you do that? Like that's what really just grinds my gears personally. But yes, it's you gotta wonder whether it's a nut shot, whether it's grabbing the fence, whether it's an eye poke. How many warnings should you get? Because it's, as you mentioned, people keep forgetting this. You're talked to in the back by the referee, where they said, "Hey, guess what? If you do this, this is an issue." And then so many times we've seen, "Yeah, that's your third eye poke. This is your final warning," where the other guy can't see and his eyes are just swollen beyond belief. And it's just like, this is your last time. It's like, really? So again, to me, it's one of those things. Refs need to be more proactive in taking a point, especially on things like a fence grab. I understand with a nut shot, if you're going in the clinch, you happen to knee, you're tired, and you hit it. There's some crazy circumstances. I'm willing to give you a little bit of leeway, right? Depending on the circumstances there. A fence grab is never acceptable.
Should be
ever.
instant. Should be instant.
Yes. So it's one of those things. Again, I don't think it ended up changing the end of the fight here, unless Taglioni would have put them on the ground with Kosi on top. But it's still, you got to feel, especially with fighters losing half their pay if they lose the fight. That's the biggest thing for me too, is you don't have fighters getting their full pay even if they lose when a ref or a judge messes up. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, 100%. I threw out a poll right after that fight asking folks, what would you be quicker to take a point away for, fence grabs or kicks to the nuts? Because you saw our fair share of those tonight as well. I think 4 was the final count, right? 61% of people say fence grabs. They're taking a point for fence grabs quicker than they are for kicks to the junk. So screw the family jewels. Grab that fence, son. I'm taking a point. All right. That's the way you guys think out there. All right. Hashtag MMA fans. I don't know if I agree with you guys on that, but it is what it is. So any other fights that you guys want to touch on before we address these few comments we have here?
I would like to highlight the ending of the Joban fight, because I thought that was a really awesome, unique moment that we only get during this time, the crowdless atmosphere. Joban going for that guillotine, really working for it. Just didn't really have the position to really crank it as much as he needed to pull it off, actually. And then, looks over to his corner after he's all grimacing and everything. Asks, "How much time's left, coach?" 15 seconds. 15, let's go. And he screams and rolls him over. That was just super cool. But at the same time, I'm sure he's good and heard that, and it helped him to survive. So it was just, I thought that was a really cool thing there to see. Something that we probably wouldn't have gotten if we weren't in a pandemic, which is crazy. So.
Yeah, I just want to highlight Jared Gooden's just toughness, right? I feel like a lot of people glossed over the fact that at one point when Joban was trying to sink that in, there's just a blatant shot of him just blood just coming out of his face, just going everywhere. And you think, oh, he's probably out. That's probably it. It's like, nope, he's fine. He's just survived that. Just okay. And again, what a phenomenal fight. That to me was the fight of the night. Just back and forth where you never knew. There were multiple times each were rocked. And it seemed like neither guy was going to back down. Just what a great back and forth fight. I loved every second of that. So that's the only thing for me.
All right. Now, before we get to these comments, a tweet just came out. Whoa, boy, we have some drama in the flyweight division and our promoter here. Apparently, Deiveson Figueiredo said if Dana really appreciated his performance tonight, he would have given him a bonus instead of asking him to fight next month. Whoo, boy.
Love it.
Oh boy. I mean, facts on facts on facts. But Jesus Christ, just to say it like that after, hey, flyweights never really get a main event spot, in the, especially on pay-per-views. Ooh, I mean, you may have kind of shot yourself in the foot there a little
Cajones.
bit. But listen, I love it. I love the energy. I love it. I do love it. But man, it's hard to think that Dana won't react some type of way or feel some type of way about that comment right there.
Yeah, that's I love to see it, just because he's not taking no shit from Dana. It really just does, and he's the champ. Good on him for doing that. And how much pull do you really have, right? But it's nice to see. It's refreshing to see, but ballsy, very ballsy, Deiveson. But yeah, that's something.
Dude, yeah. I mean, at least throw him a pay increase next time out or something to make up for it. Because, like Pat was saying, it's holiday time, man. People want to be with their family.
Exactly.
Coronavirus is still a thing, man.
Yeah. And it's, I'm not that shocked by it based on one of the things that I kept seeing in the lead up to this fight was the Figueiredo sushi chef versus the Figueiredo hairdresser versus the champ, right? Like that 4 panel of just like, hey, this is the evolution of Deiveson Figueiredo. And man, like, good for him. Good for him to just say, you know what? Nah, that's all right. I'm not going to fight next month. I'm going to go ahead and, be pissed that I didn't get a bonus. And instead, the older Shivchenko sister got a bonus for beating Lipski with some ground and pound. That was okay, but not bonus worthy. So good for Figueiredo. We'll see what comes of it. Wouldn't be shocked if we're looking at a interim title fight between
Cody Garbrandt
and Brandon Moreno. That's, that would not shock me at all.
That's the thing, though. That's the thing about this is essentially Dana asking him to stay. That's costing Figueiredo more money to have to stay here without going home. He's going to have to pay for everything that it takes for him to stay in the country and stay wherever he stays just to be there, right? Instead of going back home and living for free, right? I mean, or whatever he's doing and not getting this bonus and everything. So it's a little bit of a slap in the face. I can see why he would react this way, when he put those pieces together, because you guys do not realize that international travelers, international fighters, they really have to give up a lot. And that's kind of why you think about, why is this prospect not coming over to fight in Vegas a lot? Don't they want to get that exposure and everything? Yeah, of course they do. But fighting at the beginning of their UFC tenure, they're pretty much not making money. They're just getting the win because all the expenses that go into it with these great payouts that they receive, it almost balances out to just breaking even. So that's why they don't like to go very far in the world from wherever they live if they can avoid that. So I understand Deiveson's, frustration here now that.
Yeah. Let me tell you, as an independent contractor myself in my day job, so to speak, right? When you're looking at taxes, when you're looking at travel expenses, things like that, most of the time you got to pay for that yourself. And especially with the payouts that these guys are getting, flying from any nation that's anywhere outside the US, you're looking at a hefty price that you're probably fronting based on the contract. And then on top of that, you have to pay, right? Like, let's not overlook the fact that these guys come in and let's say, you're Jennifer Maia and you live in Brazil and you come in to fight for the title against Shevchenko. Do you think that the payout you're getting from Shevchenko is not taxed in the US and then not taxed again in Brazil? Because guess what? That's generally what they do. So yeah, it's not surprising at all. Figueiredo is pushing back on this. Good for him. Unless the UFC is willing to foot the bill for hey, guess what? You can live here in a very nice villa. You can have all this stuff. That's a different scenario. Otherwise, I totally understand his mentality here.
Yeah, if his management doesn't fight for that at the very least, then you might want to question what your management's doing. And that's also part of the reason the UFC is trying to build a hotel out there next to the Apex. Like a UF City is so they can force these things on their fighters, right? Hey, you're not going anywhere. We got everything you need.
We need to trademark that immediately. Sorry, I got to jump in here. We got to, like, Jake, producer, get in that. I mean, we got to trademark that because that is money. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I tweeted that out a few months ago, actually. So, I've been ahead of the curve on that one for sure. So, yeah, this is part of the reason, right? They want to have that hotel there. So, they're like, hey, here's your place to stay. Here's your food at the Apex. Here's your workouts. Here's everything. Oh, and hey, here's the venue as well. You don't have to go anywhere, right? That's what they're trying to do out there. So they can really make it seem like they're doing a great job for these fighters. Meanwhile, they're actually kind of screwing them over on pay at the end of the day. So, hey, more fighters are going to keep buying into this. Like, they're getting treated as they should, which, I mean, listen, if you're not going to get paid appropriately, I guess it's nice to have shiny things around that you don't have to, I don't know, whatever. That's that's another conversation for another day that will be going on and on forever. So let's address some of these comments before we get out of here. Let's go up to, let's see, this one here from Cayman Ryder. Buckley versus Chaos. They're actually training partners, so that's not going to happen. They were posing together at the post-fight interview back there with the media. But if you're just talking about fantasy matchup-wise, that would be a crazy fight, crazy clash of two strikers just actually trying to knock each other's heads off and create another highlight. So yeah, maybe if you play UFC 4 and create them and just let it rock and see what happens. I think that's the only way we ever get that fight. So
yeah, I mean, other than some kind of weird Arlovsky over him situation, right, where you've got guys in the same camp still fighting each other, that's not gonna happen, which is unfortunate. But Chaos versus Pereira was announced, I think, earlier today, so you should be super excited for that, because that's gonna be a very close matchup to what you're talking about versus Buckley. That should be just pure ridiculous. That's just get the juices going. This is the kitchen. That's what gets the kitchen going.
No, for sure. Exciting matchup right there. I mean, I don't know if you're an MMA fan and that doesn't get you excited, you're not an MMA fan at the end of the day. Yeah. Let's see here what we got next from Cayman Ryder again. Respect to Buckley for fighting above his appropriate weight class. Dude didn't even make 185. He's 3 pounds under. Yeah. Look, Buckley's a walking highlight. So, I mean, I don't think weight classes really matter all that much to that guy.
Well, and Wright fought at light heavyweight, and actually, in order to get his spot on the roster, he fought at. Didn't he fight at heavyweight? Didn't he fight? Or no, he fought at light heavyweight against Ike Villanueva, who's from around the Houston area, around me and you, Mr. Wills. So yeah, no, the fact he got it done the way he did, I mean, hats off to Buckley, because that dude was Wright was fighting in a weight class he's fought before, but he should have technically had the size advantage or weight experience, I guess, because he normally fights at 205. So that's something to keep in mind. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, he's fought at middleweight, light heavyweight. He's kind of bounced around a little bit throughout his career, but I mean, still took an L for the first time, which is still impressive for Buckley to do, regardless of where the weights were.
Second time that Fluffy Hernandez loss is
under a
there.
minute.
It's just, yeah, it's bad. It's just, I think Hernandez, it was marijuana, wasn't it?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's his second loss. I'm sorry. It's short right.
Essentially steroids, okay? Steroids.
Never mind.
That's true. You're right. My bad. Yeah.
Should be banned.
Good point.
For sure. Let's see. Cayman Ryder, Mike Blueberry Pie needs to train seriously with the good camp. I don't know what the blueberry pie is in reference to, but
Mike Periwinkle.
Oh, wow.
I think that should be Mike Perry's new nickname is Mike Blueberry Pie Perry. Because then I'm locked in, right? I still want to see him lose, but then I'm locked in. If you're Mike Blueberry Pie Perry, then it's like, oh, okay. You've got my attention.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. Fuck Mike Perry. All right.
Moving on.
2 warnings and then point deductions. I mean, listen, report. It depends on how egregious they are during the fight, man. Like I said, everyone seems to forget you're taught in the back how the ref likes to referee his fights. He's going to tell you what he's going to be looking for. He sits you down one-on-one, literally sitting across from you. Hey, listen to me. I'm talking to you right now. This is what I'm looking for. Okay? Follow my rules inside that octagon. And then you get out there. Hey, don't do that thing we already talked about. Hey, that thing we already talked about twice. Don't do that anymore. Like, okay, all right, maybe I'll take a point if you do it again. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mr. Wells here. Chris Tiote's just a terrible ref. But no, yeah, it's I am very much one stern warning and then a point taken afterward in most situations. If you've got some crazy extenuating circumstances, okay, we can look at that. Until then, the default should be you get warned in the back, you get 1 warning in the fight, and then that's it. And especially if it's something like a fence grab or, a blatant nut shot where if you're just lining right down the pipe, you need a point taken. That's my thoughts on it. Drake, do you have any?
Raymond Daniels should be exiled from the sport for his last fight.
Well,
that's all I gotta say.
There you go. Wow.
No, I agree.
That's
hard to argue.
Okay.
Hard to argue.
I'm gonna take a
Hard to
sip out for that. Yeah.
I love Raymond Daniels. I'm joking, but just a very unique situation there. No, I think it's probably not right to do it situationally, but like talking about fence grabs, I think fence grabs right away, no warnings whatsoever, because come on. I mean, sure, it could be an accident, reactionary, instinctual. I want to grab onto things. Come on. You should know that one. You should generally know that you're either going to be against the cage or you're on the cage, right? So that one, I would say immediate point deduction, but then like everything else, 1 really hard warning and then do it. But I don't know if you could be picky like that. But hey, the ref gets to do what he wants to do. So, and these are the rules.
Yeah,
so.
Like not use replay when it's available.
True.
Anyway.
They're still trying to figure it out, guys. I mean, listen, it's very early stages. They're beta testing, apparently. Who knows? So moving on here, we got Ali Davidson would have devoured Cody's soul tonight. I 100% agree with that statement right there. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Cody Garbrandt has some of the worst striking defense ever. I'm sorry. Well, you look at his run to the title, right? He got a fast track. His run to just skip everybody. Where Dillashaw was calling for that rematch against Cruz, didn't get it. You should probably have done, if you're going from a meritocracy, you should have done Dillashaw versus Garbrandt then and there. Instead, you had Garbrandt just bypass him, get that title shot, get that win. Then you ended up doing Dillashaw Garbrandt, and look how it turned out twice. But, I mean, he has terrible striking defense, and Figueiredo has knockout power at 125. And keep in mind, Garbrandt already has a weak chin at 135. If he has to cut more weight to get down to 125, I mean, that's just asking for a knockout victory there. I would have put so much money on Figgy to knock out Garbrandt there. I mean, does anybody feel different? Because I feel like that would have been easy money all day.
I think he would have heard him and then submitted him. But essentially, yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So, I thought that if that would be the matchup, then yeah, because Davidson, like I said when we talked about this fight earlier on the broadcast here, that he has that championship swag. He's got that aura. Like he's like, I'm gonna take the center of this octagon and really be kind of intimidating in here. He's got that swag about him right now, and Cody doesn't have that. At least right now. I mean, listen, he knocked the shit out of who was that? That highlight KO that he had recently.
Sun Tzu?
Yes, the Sun Tzu. His name is escaping me.
Poor old the Sun Tzu.
I mean, listen, that was a hell of a knockout, right? But put him in there against a guy like Deiveson right now, I think it'd be just a whole different story, man. Because Deiveson, he's calculated, he's aggressive, he's got better defense, like Pat was talking about, right?
Yeah.
And Cody's, if he gets frustrated, he's just going to start standing and trying to land a swooping overhand, or like just start swinging hooks, and like defense be damned. He's like, who gets touched first?
And keep in mind, again, Deiveson Figueiredo has one loss against Jussier Formiga. And that was when he cut weight late, and he cut 37 pounds in a week to barely get on the scale. That's insanity. So I don't know how you can look at Figueiredo and think that he doesn't just walk through Garbrandt all day long, especially since this time around he weighed in, 10 minutes in. I mean, come on.
Yeah, 100%. Let's see, Cayman Ryder. Once again, the worst fight tonight was Chookagian and Calvillo. Main card, maybe?
I didn't particularly enjoy the second fight. I mean, I'm pretty easy to please, honestly, so I didn't really think any fights were too awful or anything. But I mean, if you're gonna say which fight was the least good, yeah, there were a couple, and I mean that would probably be down towards the bottom, just because Chookagian just did her thing. Wasn't a super banger or anything, but yeah, it's down towards the bottom. I don't know if I would say it's the very worst. That second fight, the Dacus Stoltzfus, however you say his name, that one gets me a little bit, Mr. Pronunciation Master over here. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Pat? Was that the worst fight?
First off, before you answer that, Pat, the way that Drake was nailing all these names last night in Ryzen, and he stumbles on that, I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know what's going on there, Drake.
Slipping.
Yeah, slipping, man. No, I don't. Honestly, looking through the card, yeah, I would say the Dacus versus I can't pronounce things as good as you can.
Dustin.
Dustin. The Dacus versus Dustin fight. Yeah, wasn't as good. I also would say that the Dalby Rodriguez fight was
that one
fine.
under-delivered.
Yeah, it was fine, but it definitely under-delivered. And in terms of overall output, I'm trying to look that up right now. I'm pretty sure Chookagian versus Calvillo actually delivered more strikes overall than that one did. So I would say, for me, that was the worst fight of the night, especially with just, Rodriguez's hesitancy. Like, I still can't believe. I mean, I disagree with the judges, the way that they scored that entire fight, but it was close, and I thought Dalby probably should have won. But Rodriguez had Dalby hurt there at the third, and then just lazily goes for a takedown rather than just doing Rodriguez and throwing and letting his hands go, despite his coach is just screaming, "Let your hands go." I don't know how many times. That to me was the worst fight of the night, just because of the way that underdelivered and was just kind of not what we expected. Whereas Chookagian versus Calvillo, that was high volume. It was not. Yes, it's not a highlight reel KO for Chookagian, right? But as we've talked about, that's what Chookagian does. So
got what we paid for with that one, right? So that's like the thing.
Yeah, for sure. No, listen, I don't want to say it was the worst fight of the night. I mean, in terms of an opponent not offering up resistance, I guess you could say that, in terms of like Calvillo not making really any adjustments. I mean, she landed a few punches here and there, but it wasn't anything that was really going to change the pace of the fight for Katlyn. So I guess if you want to say in terms of an opponent offering up, offense, like significant offense, then sure, I can agree in that regard. But I thought it was a pretty good showcase for Katlyn at the end of the day. So let's see. Last comment we have here from Iman Report: fighters need to unionize. And
lengthy discussion.
Yeah.
Our stream is about to just get cut.
This is the one, right? That's the one. Listen, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can put this on my tombstone. Like, yeah, I will. Yeah, I've been saying this for years and years, and we'll continue to say it. So
Yeah, it's I don't know. I've done a lot of research into it. I've talked to Leslie Smith, who tried to unionize, right? Like, it's so hard because of the way that politics and laws work. And if you look at the NLRB, the National, basically the National Labor Relations Board, the way they're set up, that makes a massive difference. The basic examples of that are the current back and forth going on right now in California with Uber and Lyft drivers. Are you employees? Are you contractors? That's a huge thing that's been going back and forth, gone to the highest court in California, is now making its way through the federal courts. It has been ruled on kind of in the federal courts, but been sent back down, and now could get ruled on again. The NLRB makes a massive difference in how unions are either ratified or dispersed. And now that we have a new president-elect in the U.S., this will greatly affect things because they will...
Wait, do we? Are you serious?
Wait, what?
Come on. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Sorry.
Landslide victory.
Okay. So... now that we have a presumptive president-elect.
Recount.
What's he like, one in 32 in court right now? And that one was saying, hey, you can stand 5 feet closer to the counters. Like, what a joke. That's a whole nother story for another day and another channel entirely.
Yes, that's true. Although I'm talking about President-elect Joe Biden. So that's... Anyway, point is that there's a very good chance we will have a new NLRB head of the NLRB in 2 years, I believe. It's either a year and a half or 2 years. That will make a massive difference because they will decide if the UFC fighters decide to unionize, where they sign enough cards, they say, yes, we want to unionize, and move forward. It will go through the federal process and through the NLRB, and whoever is the head of that department and who assigns, down the ranks of where everyone's, jobs are at, that will make a massive difference on whether or not they have a standing in court or not, and whether or not they can legally be certified as a union. Because right now, they can't, they basically got the cards stacked against them where, as Leslie Smith said, yes, we could have gotten all the signatures. We could have moved forward. We would have been shot down immediately and said, nope, you're independent contractors, no way. Didn't make sense to do it. 2 years from now, probably makes sense to bring this to the attention of the NLRB and say, yeah, you know what, actually, we're good. And see what happens there, because I could definitely see it going a different way, and that would make a world of difference. And that's just politics and stupid crap. But yes, fighters do need to unionize. They do need to come together and do that. We've had multiple fighters talk about that, but you got to take action. You got to commit, and it's a whole bundle of fun politics. So there you go.
Bundle of fun. Yes. They need to unionize. Will they? I don't think so. But hey, they should do it.
No, yeah.
100%. I think they will. I think they will personally, but we'll see. Just because you only need so many signatures, that's the key part. Is you don't need, you don't need everybody. You just need enough. So we'll see. But
I think we missed the sweet spot for the time being for them to really get it going when they had prominent fighters that were making a lot of money in the sport getting behind the movement. Now, when the UFC is doing this massive roster overhaul to Contender Series, guys, you got a lot of guys that are struggling to keep the bills paid all of a sudden on the roster. So, hey, we'll get you a fight. Just, shut up about this union stuff, listen, they're gonna do everything they can without outright saying, "Hey, don't unionize," to deter that from happening. So they're going to continue to cut these guys that make too much money, and they won't have a leg to stand on at the end of the day if they're not on the roster, right?
Yep, that's a great point. UFC is trying to get ahead of this, especially with the amount of fighters they're cutting. Juicia Formiga, who we've mentioned multiple times on this broadcast, was cut despite being the only person to hand the champion a loss, and looking very competitive in his last couple fights. Interesting call, but again, it's a UFC prerogative to bring in new talent, bring in new people. That's, hey, you know what? We'll get you paid. We'll get you going. And these are people that are unlikely to unionize, despite the presidential shift that we expect come January. So, yeah, it's an interesting time. We'll see what happens. You've got the UFC antitrust lawsuit where you've got class certification almost certainly coming. Would have been certified literally on Monday had they not pushed it back for coronavirus. So now I think it's December 10th. But look out for that, because they will probably certify that as a class action lawsuit, which will be massive. And then you've got the Ali Act possibly coming back into light with that expansion under the new administration. So.
Yeah, 100%. So, guys, before we get out of here, everyone watching, please thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll leave you with one more news bit before we get out of here. Breaking news, a kind of strangely worded tweet here from Ariel Helwani. UFC flyweight champion Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno have officially verbally agreed, weird phrasing, to fight at UFC 256 on December 12th. So it looks like that's the date we're talking about. Just a few days from now, we're going to see those two gentlemen who just fought tonight, although they didn't take very much damage at all, back in action. They're going to have to cut weight again, which sucks for them. But hey, I guess another opportunity to earn some money before the holidays are over with. I guess
it's pretty insane, actually, if this does happen, because think about, man, for Moreno specifically, like, the ball's on him too. Like, dude, don't you want a full camp to face this champ who's looking very good? And of course, you're looking great too, man. But like, is this the ideal situation? I mean, take the opportunity when it's given to you, of course, but that's pretty wild. I don't think, have we seen back-to-back title fights this soon? I know Ronda, of course, did the back-to-back after, what was it, Misha, the rematch, and then Sarah McMahon. That was like, even then, I think there was a pay-per-view between that, but this would be straight up, what, 2-3 weeks? I mean,
so according to the follow-up tweet from Ariel Helwani, according to ESPN Stats and Info, this is the quickest.
Okay.
21 days. 21 days would be the quickest for a champion and or challenger in a title fight to turn around. So a little bit of history here.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't see it happening. I'm going to go ahead and call it right now. I don't think it happens. I think this is the UFC trying to pressure Figueiredo and
after
Moreno.
those comments.
Yes. Yeah, right. After those comments, I think this is them trying to pressure them into a title fight. Could it happen? Sure. Will it happen? I don't know. And again, this is a classic UFC tactic, especially since Nunes pulled out from the Megan Anderson fight. So normally, end of year pay-per-view, if not any pay-per-view, including this one, you have 2 title fights. Sometimes you have 1, but especially when you don't have, I don't know how else to say it, the more popular titles on the line, you generally have 2 title fights to kind of make up for that. That's just the UFC MO. If you look back throughout the history, especially since Endeavor bought the UFC in 2016, that's what they do. As if you're going to have one of the less popular titles on the line in the main event, you have a co-main event with a title as well. So you still have Jan versus Sterling, which will headline the event, but now you're talking about putting the flyweight event or flyweight title on the line as the co-main event. Will it actually happen? Did Figueiredo actually sign off on this? I don't know.
Officially,
I really
verbally.
don't. Yeah. I think this is another UFC tactic. So we'll see. We'll see if it happens or not. But especially based on the other comments Figueiredo made today, I'm going to say no, it's not going to happen.
Well, as we know, officially verbally is not inked and is not, I guess, bound to any contractual obligations officially verbally. But I am going to say now we are officially verbally ending this broadcast, this UFC 255 recap. Thanks for joining us, guys. I'm Matthew Wells. That's Pat OJ. That's Drake Riggs. We had fun tonight. I hope you did too. Like and subscribe. Watch all the other content that we got coming out this week, and join us for our next live stream. If you hit subscribe and click that little bell for notifications, you'll know when we go live. So do that. That's your homework for